What's going on, guys, and welcome to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for April 2nd, 2021. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And shockingly enough, we are 1 week out from WrestleMania. 1 week from today is Night 1 of Mania, and I know it doesn't feel like it. I am excited for the event overall, because I always am. The build of the event has been very all over the place, to say the least, specifically in the Raw side. I think SmackDown has done a far better job of building up their side of things than Raw has. Raw on Monday was a terrible show. Probably the worst episode of 2021. And that's saying something. Raw's had its good shows, it's had its decent shows, it's had its abysmal shows, and then there's shows like Monday that are just outright terrible. When it comes to this show, though, I thought this was a lot better. Not as good as last week's SmackDown, but still a solid show that did its job in effectively building towards next week's WrestleMania event. Not a lot of matches that really stood out. We had some decent action, good storyline progression. I thought the stuff with the women on the show was very disappointing. And the thing is that SmackDown has a good women's division, but how they booked them or how they've booked them lately has been a bit underwhelming, to say the least. So we'll get into all of that momentarily. But we started off the show with Edge. Talking about his actions from last week, explaining his actions, why he went after Daniel Bryan, why he went off the deep end. And I thought he did a great job. Edge is obviously a great talker. He's one of the best talkers in all of WWE right now. But he was also a tremendous talker as a babyface, too. Edge has always been a better heel than a babyface. But when he came back a year ago, even when he came back earlier this year for the Royal Rumble, he had an amazing promo right before the Rumble saying why he would win it all, and he did. I am of two minds, the whole Edge heel thing when it comes to whether, was it too soon? Should they have done it? I think their logic was that they felt Edge would be booed come Tampa. Because you have Roman Reigns, who is doing the best work of his entire career right now as a heel. And then you have Daniel Bryan, who's obviously the biggest babyface in the world. You can never boo Daniel Bryan, really. So they probably felt that Edge would be the last man, or the odd man out. And if it was Roman and Edge one-on-one, they would probably still cheer Roman over Edge. And knowing how fickle fans can be, I absolutely believe that. I mean, this is the same Edge a year ago that people were out of their seats cheering for and probably would have been cheering to win the Rumble earlier this year. But when you put him up against the guy who's doing the best work of his career right now, they're going to side with Roman Reigns. That's how fickle fans can be. So I don't know if I would be booing Edge. I think Edge winning would have been cool, and he still could win as a heel. It's a lot less likely, I think, but we'll get to that at the end of the show here for SmackDown. But anyway, he showed how great of a heel he can be on the mic here with an awesome promo, explaining his actions, explaining that the Rated R superstar is indeed back. So I thought this was a very good way to kick off the show. Establish Edge's new motivations for wanting to turn his back on the fans, wanting to kind of go rogue, so to speak, and why he did what he did last week on SmackDown. So I thought this was really, really good, and I think they've created an awesome dynamic here with Roman Reigns being the obvious heel of the match. Edge is a heel, clearly, but he's also kind of a conflicted tweener in a way. Like, he hates Roman Reigns, but he's also developed this hatred for Daniel Bryan as well, for Daniel Bryan working his way into the WrestleMania main event. And Edge even said here in this promo he would have been perfectly content with Daniel Bryan challenging the winner of himself and Roman on night 2 or on a later date. Daniel Bryan did not have to be in this match exactly. And honestly, I think Bryan was even the one who had suggested that. I think it was Adam Pearce who ultimately settled on making it a triple threat. So Edge is pissed that his WrestleMania moment has been ruined. He can still walk out the new world champion come next weekend, but it's going to be a lot harder when it's a triple threat. This was supposed to be his night to go one-on-one with Roman and beat him for that championship. But he had that moment, not stolen from him, but drastically differed because Daniel Bryan has now been added to the equation. So I like the story here. I like what they're going for. I was already looking forward to Roman Reigns and Edge based off their early interactions and the story you can tell there. But adding Daniel Bryan to the mix has not been a bad idea. I was definitely conflicted a few weeks ago. And even now, I think Roman and Edge would have been a perfectly fine one-on-one match. But adding Daniel Bryan to the match is not going to make it any worse. And if anything, it's only strengthened the story there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out come next weekend. Our first match of the show saw Otis, Chad Gable, and the SmackDown Tag Team Champions Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode beat the Street Profits and Dominic and Rey Mysterio. Good little 8-man tag team match here. I feel like we've seen every combination of these teams against each other, and it's almost always unlike the first match on the show. There's a lot of good talent in this match. The problem is that there's no story. They're literally trading wins for the sake of trading wins. Like, you'll have Rey Mysterio beat Dolph Ziggler a week ago, but then 2 weeks ago, they're losing to Otis and Chad Gable. You know what I mean? Like, it's very inconsistent. But this was a good match. It showcased all 4 teams in the match, and predictably enough, as we've been saying for weeks now here in these audio reviews for SmackDown, it will be a fatal 4-way for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Roode and Ziggler, the current champions, Otis and Gable, the Alpha Academy, the Street Profits, and then the duo of Dominic and Rey Mysterio. Although it's not happening at WrestleMania. We found out earlier in the week that it's actually going to be taking place next week on SmackDown, and what they're calling a WrestleMania edition of Friday Night SmackDown. Now, that will be pre-taped, I believe, because they're going to be preparing for WrestleMania next week, doing other WrestleMania week things. Raw, I'm pretty sure, has already been taped. So they pre-taped Raw. They're probably going to pre-tape SmackDown. If they didn't do it last night, maybe they'll do it early next week. I mean, they still could do it live, but I'm not really sure what the point would be if there's no fans. You know what I mean? So, I know spoilers could get out, but it's the fucking tag titles and the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. I think it hardly matters at this point. I am of two minds on the thing. I'll keep this brief when it comes to those matches taking place next week. For one, the Battle Royal, who gives a fuck? It's all losers for the most part, and there are some good talents in there, like Jeff Hardy and Ricochet and Alexander Benjamin, people like that. People of that ilk. But the Battle Royal has never meant anything. It has very rarely been on the main card, I think, since they started the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. It wasn't even on last year's show, for obvious reasons. I mean, that was when COVID first started. You're not going to put fucking 30 people in the same ring together, you know? But before that, they had, WrestleMania 30. It was obviously on the main card because it was the first one. 31, it was on the kickoff. 32, it was on the main card. But that was kind of cool because Corbin won it. And that was like his debut, and it was a great moment. I think all the rest have taken place on the kickoff. 33 definitely did. I was there for that one. 35 as well, same scenario. I was there for that. 34 did as well. And then 36, there was no Battle Royal. So it's only been on the main card twice out of 5 years? 6 years? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So yeah, 6 Battle Royals, 2 of which have ended up on the main card. This would be no different. They haven't even mentioned the fucking Battle Royal before this past week. So I'm perfectly fine with that being on SmackDown. And it's also one of those Battle Royals that's merely intended to get everyone on the show. So I really don't care. The tag titles, it doesn't have a story. It's not like it's this great match that's been building for months. Like when the Usos and the New Day got put on the SummerSlam kickoff show years ago, like back in 2017, that was a bit egregious because the matches they were having were great. There was a story there. The feud had been building for months. That was weird. This doesn't have any real story at all. The only issue with it, and this is really just me from a personal standpoint, in that you kind of screw these guys out of that WrestleMania moment. Like, let's say Rey and Dominic win the tag titles next week. That is a WrestleMania moment. But there's no crowd there for it, and it happened on a random SmackDown. So, part of me is happy because I complain constantly about them bloating these pay-per-view cards. You know, AEW does the same thing, WrestleMania, every single fucking year. And yeah, it's the biggest show of the year, but you don't have to have 15 match cards. And it's different this year with 2 different nights, so you probably could have gotten away with doing this match on one of the 2 nights. Why not do it on the kickoff show? And I think they might be doing a fatal 4-way women's tag team match on the kickoff to determine the opponents for Nia and Shayna on night 2. Maybe. I'm not exactly sure. Who even cares at this point? But, it sucks for the performers who, I don't know if they'll get that WrestleMania payday, possibly. But, the first show back with fans, they likely won't be a part of it. So that kind of sucks. But, again, I am happy that they aren't over-bloating the cards. And that hopefully with the show starting later this year, it's probably the first time it started at 8 p.m., since I don't know when, probably 10, 15, 20 years. I'm not sure when the last time it started at 8 p.m. was. For as long as I've been a fan, I think it's always started at 7 p.m. But, it gets the show over earlier, and WrestleMania is typically later anyway. With the 2 nights, they'll probably do around 3.5 hours for each event, which makes the most sense. So you don't want to put matches on there that don't really belong in the main card. But it is unfortunate that these guys will not be getting a crowd there for their... I say big match. It really isn't a big match. Like, there's a lot of talent in there, and it should be a good match. But, let's say, again, if Rey and Dominic win the tag titles, they're not getting that moment. You know what I mean? So that kind of sucks, but it is what it is, I suppose. We had Seth Rollins and Cesaro going face-to-face in a very good exchange here. Kind of briefly recapping the feud, going back and forth. Nothing specifically stood out about the exchange, but I thought it was really, really good. Cesaro is not the greatest talker in the world. That is not a secret. But he's held his own on the mic throughout this entire feud. It is great that he's actually getting more mic time. This is probably the most I've ever heard from Cesaro in his entire career. Even when he was getting that biggest push of his career 7 years ago in 2014, coming off the Battle Royal win at WrestleMania 30, Heyman was doing all the talking for him. Zeb Coulter was doing the talking for him before that. When they were in the bar, Sheamus would talk more often than Cesaro. So this is the most that we've ever heard from Cesaro. And if they want to get him over as a babyface, which I think it's working, even though there's no fans there, it seems like it's clicking, he's building momentum, then having him talk more is key, whether it be scripted or not. Like that, unscripted promo on Talking Smack, he kind of stumbled over his words at several points, but you could tell it was a raw, real promo. That, I don't know if it was unscripted entirely, he was probably going off of bullet points, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he was told to just go out there and speak how he felt right from the heart. So that's been nice to see. Rollins is obviously great in every aspect, whether it be on the mic or in the ring or as a character, whatever. So he was great here. The suits continue to be absolutely ridiculous, but that's the point. So this was good. Rollins walked off after Cesaro kind of got the better of their exchange. I'm looking forward to that match next week. I am. And I'm hoping Cesaro pulls out the win. He can still look really good in defeat and benefit from losing in a way, but I do think he would gain more from beating Rollins at WrestleMania, and Rollins doesn't really lose much. Yeah, he lost last year, but before last year, Rollins has won almost every freaking year at WrestleMania. I mean, he won at WrestleMania 34. WrestleMania 35, he became Universal Champion. 34, he was Intercontinental Champion. 33, he beat Triple H. 32, he wasn't there, but 31, he became WWE Champion. I mean, Rollins had not lost at a WrestleMania. He lost to Orton earlier on in the evening at 31. But not a WrestleMania had gone by where he didn't win at least one match before last year. So I think he can endure the loss and be perfectly fine. I think this is Cesaro's night. I hope he wins. But either way, I'm looking forward to the match. Natalya versus Shayna Baszler. This was a blink and you missed it match. It literally lasted 30 seconds. What the fuck was this? You have Shayna and Nia come out here every week, and Nia's terrible anyway. Shayna is great. She's stuck in the stupid tag team stuff. They have her lose constantly. But they have them come out. WWE has these two come out every freaking week, Raw, SmackDown, even NXT sometimes, and talk about how dominant they are. Yeah, they've been champions for the better part of the last 8 months, but these two women, specifically Shayna, can never win in singles matches. She literally just lost to Naomi on Raw, and she lost to friggin' Natalya here in 30 seconds. It doesn't get much worse than that, than if she got pinned by Lana, which she has before. I mean, Shayna has literally lost to everyone under the sun on this show between Natalya. She's lost to Naomi. She's lost to Lana at least once or twice. Asuka has beaten her. Becky Lynch beat her. Charlotte Flair has beaten her. I mean, seriously, it's ridiculous. So that wasn't the end of it, though. They quickly rushed the match, which could have been decent. I mean, they had a couple good matches last year on the show on Raw. I don't know. The heel versus heel dynamic didn't make this any more interesting, but whatever. So you had the other teams come out. The Riot Squad came out. Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke came out. Lana and Naomi. And I thought one more team. Is there another team? I'm pretty sure there were 4 teams. Oh, Natalya and Tamina, obviously. So you had the 4 teams kind of clashing with the champions. I assume, like I said earlier, we get a Fatal 4-Way Women's Tag Team match on night 1. Hopefully on the kickoff, because who cares about it being on the main card? And again, it's nice they get their WrestleMania payday, but like that shit makes even less sense than the SmackDown Tag Team title match. Like, I know you want to get all the women on the show, but still, it's stupid. Like, the tag team division right now is a complete fucking mess. Even more so than the men's, and that's saying something. Even though they have more teams, none of these teams really mean anything. So again, like I said, I assume that we get some sort of multi-women tag team match on night 1, maybe on Raw, hopefully on Raw, not at Mania, but we'll see. And then the winners challenge Nia and Shayna at WrestleMania night 2. So then we had the red carpet trailer premiere of Sami Zayn's big conspiracy documentary. And I honestly thought, I'm going to be completely honest here, This was entertaining. Sami Zayn is great. He's won me over in this conspiracy role. He's been doing great work ever really since he came back last summer. But it's gotten better. Like, I thought watching the trailer, it was really well done. He knows his character. He's committed to the character. And I think that's what makes it even better. The reason I say, like, oh, it, exceeded my expectations or whatever, wasn't because of Sami. I mean, he was great. But because of Logan Paul's involvement. I think I said this last week, but who the fuck cares about Logan Paul? I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who care about Logan Paul. He has his fans. He has his followers. And I understand that. I understand why they're bringing him in. But to me, he will always be, and to everyone else, the dumbass who filmed himself in the suicide forest or whatever it was in Japan several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, that will never not be something that I think of when I see this guy. Every single time I hear his name or see him on YouTube or whatever, that is the first thing I think of. And I feel like his career has taken a big turn for the worse since then. Obviously, he's still making a shit ton of money, way more than I ever will. So I'm not really surprised as to why they would bring him in. The guy's relevant to a certain degree, but he has that stench on him. So my problem with this is that, yeah, I probably brought in maybe some curious viewers to see what he would do on the show. He will be at WrestleMania, that was confirmed. And it's probably going to get a shit ton of hits on YouTube. My problem with this, selfishly, is that you talk to a non-fan about people that are involved with WWE, like celebrities. You hear Shaq, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Obviously, my parents or, people my age know Logan Paul. The generation above us don't, likely. But the thing with Logan Paul is that the guy's a goof. He has that stench on him. So if I were to tell one of my friends, hey, they had this celebrity on WWE TV this week, they'll probably be like, oh, they're probably scraping the bottom of the barrel to get Logan fucking Paul on their show. And again, he is a name, so WWE isn't going for big names. I mean, they did with Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny doesn't have any bad stench around him at all. The guy's been busting his ass with WWE. He's very successful in the music industry, obviously. So he's someone, for as little as we cared about him coming in around Royal Rumble time, like, oh, why would he be involved in a WrestleMania match? It seems like it's paid off. People know who Bad Bunny is. He's a notable name. He was at the Grammys recently, I believe. The Raw ratings aren't the highest they've ever been, but I think he's actually paid off for them. Logan Paul, he might do some good numbers, but I don't know how many people will watch WrestleMania just to see Logan Paul. Bad Bunny, maybe. But Logan Paul's a fucking idiot, and I feel like it does more damage to like WWE's reputation than it does to help it. But again, I will say the segment I thought was decent. He actually did a decent job here. I hate to fucking say that, but for as big of a goof as this guy is, he did a decent job. He's a YouTuber. You could tell he's good with a camera. He's probably acted before in his videos, so I'm not entirely surprised. So I thought, he did a decent job. Sami Zayn was very entertaining. They kept Logan Paul very limited here with what he had to do and say. But I thought what he did and what he had to do was fine. I don't really care, but he did a decent job. Kevin Owens came in, stunned Sami, setting the stage for the Mania match that was confirmed last week. And then Sami Zayn retaliated backstage afterward by attacking Kevin Owens. So, honestly, I thought this was a good segment. I was expecting the worst here with Logan Paul's involvement, but it wasn't that bad. If we get a recreation of the Kevin Owens Machine Gun Kelly moment from Raw in 2015 when Owens powerbombed his ass off the Raw stage, and we get a recreation of that with Logan Paul at Mania, then all of this will be worth it. Otherwise, it's disappointing that the focus of the feud is partially on Logan Paul. Even if it was a little bit of focus, anything involving Logan Paul is, to me, just not interesting. But I have enough faith that Sami and Owens can go out there and have a great match. The long-awaited singles match between the two at a WrestleMania event. So hopefully it ends up being worth it, and Logan Paul gets his comeuppance in the end. Hey, you know what I was thinking while watching this segment? Owens has been talking about for a while now, and WWE even posted this on their YouTube channel, so which makes me think that they could be going this direction. What if you have Owens and Zayn kind of rekindle their friendship after Owens hopefully beats... I mean, Zayn can win too, and it's fine. It really doesn't matter who wins. But you have the two rekindle their friendship on WrestleMania. They kind of embrace each other. We get a babyface tag team out of it. SmackDown with Edge going heel now. They don't really need Sami Zayn as a heel anymore. You had Apollo Crews go heel. You don't really need Sami Zayn as a heel anymore. You have Corbin too. So I would turn Owens, or rather Sami Zayn babyface, and team him with Kevin Owens and see what they can do. Honestly, I think it'd be pretty entertaining. But then you end that segment with Owens and Zayn attacking Logan Paul. And nobody likes Logan Paul, so no one's going to boo that if they were to do that. But I think that'd be pretty cool. Will they do it? Probably not, but it's just an idea. We had the first ever, I believe, one-on-one match on this show between Bianca Belair and Carmella. A match I was hoping they would do at Fastlane. It's not like a big match, like, oh, why would you blow this off on TV type of match. Not like the first outing between Bayley and Belair. Like, that was a bit different. But they were kind of teasing it in the beginning of the Bianca Rumble win build, because Carmella was coming off the series of matches with Sasha. Reginald was getting involved in the Sasha-Bianca shit for some reason. I figured it would lead to Carmella and Bianca at Elimination Chamber or at Fastlane. We never got either of those matches, and instead WWE wasted our time with Bianca and Sasha versus Nia and Shayna, which was a complete waste. Just a total waste. We got Bianca and Carmella here. They were never going to go out there and have a barn burner of a match, but I would have saved this for a little bit later down the road, for when it may have meant more. Carmella has just, I don't even know what's going on with her. I mean, Carmella has actually done very good work with this current character of hers. Like the second coming of Eva Marie and Emelina, all this other shit. Doesn't really do a lot for me. But again, she's been committed to the character. She's played the role well. She had some of her best matches ever on the main roster. With Sasha Banks, I mean, given the opponent, I'm not surprised. But they had a pair of very good matches at the Rumble and TLC. How do they follow up on that? By doing absolutely nothing with the woman coming out of the Royal Rumble. She's been barely on the show. Reginald has been off with Nia and Shayna for some stupid reason. I don't know why. So Carmella's been back the last week or two now. She challenged Bianca here, and the match was over in 2.5 minutes. I mean, we're going back to the Diva Division days, where the women would get like a minute or two for their matches. First, Natalya and Shayna get 30 seconds earlier in the evening, and now Bianca and Carmella have 2.5 minutes. What is this shit? And again, I don't expect either of those matches to be 20-minute classics, nor should they be, but 2.5 minutes, 30 seconds, give me a fucking break. At that point, don't even do the match. Like, just do a brawl or something, you know what I mean? So, and it's funny, too, you look at NXT from Wednesday and their women's division, how stacked it is. They literally, I'm pretty sure, had 3 women's division matches in a row on Wednesday. They had the Waze match, they had the Xia Li, Casey match, and Raquel Gonzalez and Zoe Stark in all 3 matches. I mean, they weren't great, all 3 of them weren't great, but they gave the women a lot of time on Wednesday. And they have a smaller roster, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But, yeah, this was fine. Sasha came in the ring afterward wearing another ridiculous outfit. You talk about Rollins' ridiculous suits. What the hell is Sasha wearing when she comes out every single week? I mean, seriously, some of the outfits that she comes out in, people love this shit. I mean, people, if you're on the Sasha Banks train, and she is great, if you're on the Sasha Banks train, then you probably don't care or just eating this shit up. I think she just looks ridiculous, but, I mean, who am I to say? I know nothing about style. But anyway, so Sasha and Bianca go face-to-face. WrestleMania sign in the background. I appreciate the attempt to heat up the feud in the last few weeks. It's been well done, but we should have gotten this shit a month or two ago. I mean, seriously, for all the time they wasted on Bianca and Sasha versus Nia and Shayna, all that time could have been devoted to this, as opposed to rushing into it with 3 weeks to go before Mania. I mean, 3 weeks from Fastlane to Mania. Now we have a week, but whatever. The main event was Daniel Bryan and Jey Uso in a street fight. A good match. I mean, I feel like we've seen so much of Daniel Bryan and Jey that it's not that it's hard to care, but, you know, we've just seen it a lot. Like, I remember they did it, was it after Hell in the Cell? It was either after Hell in the Cell or in November or before Survivor Series. Jey Uso beat Daniel Bryan. I don't know if it was I think he did beat him clean. Pretty sure he beat him clean. I think it was right after Hell in the Cell that Jey Uso beat Bryan. So that's one match. They had a rematch in the Friday Night SmackDown before Survivor Series that Bryan won. That was match number 2. They had a third match on Christmas. I remember that because it was a good match. They had a third match then. They had a fourth match coming out of Elimination Chamber that Bryan and Uso, it ended in like a double counter. They had a fifth match instead of a steel cage a couple of weeks ago that Bryan won. And this was the 6th match, I'm pretty sure, the 6th one-on-one match these two have had since November or October. I mean, again, I know they're trying to waste or, kill time before Mania, but that's a lot. Thankfully, they work well together. It was an enjoyable main event. The outcome was never in doubt. But it was a good match, and Jey Uso continues to deliver in the main event spot. He's not a main eventer, but in the main event of SmackDown, working with the bigger names like Edge, like Bryan, like Owens, like people like that, it's been completely acceptable. But this was good. Bryan laid out Edge, who was sitting in on commentary. He ran over to him, delivered a running knee. Roman Reigns came out on the stage. I think he was sitting there the whole time in his chair. with Paul Heyman. Bryan walked past him. Reigns attempted to attack him, and he laid out him with the running knee too. So last week was Edge's week. This week was Daniel Bryan's week. I don't know if Reigns will stand tall next week. But after watching all of this play out, my number one thought was Roman Reigns is winning at WrestleMania. I mean, you could do the Bryan win. It's kind of a repeat of WrestleMania 30, but whatever. If people want to see it, that's fine. You can do that, but again, we've already seen Bryan and Roman a bunch. Not a bunch, but at least twice recently. You can do Bryan and Edge, but then it doesn't really work with Bryan as the champion, I feel. So I don't think Bryan's winning. There's a chance. I think any one of these three men can win. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I don't think Bryan's going to win. Edge winning would have been my choice if it was one-on-one, but it's not. And he's a heel. So would they close out WrestleMania with him as the champion? Yeah, 10 years from when he retired is a pretty cool story. But would they do it with him as a heel? Probably not. So I'm thinking Roman Reigns retains. And Edge and Bryan kind of go off and do their own feud, and then maybe that paves the way for Cesaro to step on in and face Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank. I think that'd be fucking awesome. So that's where I see this going. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, why would Edge, why would him winning the championship be, why would they not do that but Roman winning? I mean, we've seen the Roman Reigns story before, like with Orton and Cena and Triple H. Granted, it didn't main event WrestleMania 24, but like everyone expected Cena or Triple H to win, and then Randy Orton ended up winning. He ended up retaining. I could see the exact same thing happening with, with these three. Especially it's night 2. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I can't really say why. I just get the feeling that Roman Reigns will probably retain. But honestly, any one of these three guys, I'm a fan of them all. They all have their storyline reasons for winning. So honestly, I'm fine with any outcome they go with, which is cool because you don't ordinarily get that. Usually with like the part-timers and Brock's in there and Goldberg's in there, Triple H is in there, you're like, oh, the other person has to win. But we don't really have that this year. And yet Edge is a part-timer, quote-unquote, but he's more full-time than any of those other people. He was more full-time than Cena in the last couple of years. He was more full-time than Triple H, Brock, Goldberg, Taker. I mean, Edge actually wrestles on TV. Not very often, but he's wrestled. He makes more appearances weekly than any of those other people. So him winning the championship would not be bad either. But overall, I thought this was a decent show. Again, like I said, the stuff with the women was just disappointing. Bianca and Carmella was way too short. I mean, it was an Iron Man match compared to Natalia and Shayna, which again, I don't really care about, but then don't even do the match in the first place. The build to WrestleMania was well done, and as I said earlier, with the SmackDown side of things, they've actually done a great job of creating a card that I care about. Owens and Zayn should be a lot of fun, hopefully. The Logan Paul stuff isn't for me, but it's cool that Sami and Owens are getting their one-on-one match at Mania. Rollins and Cesaro could be a barn burner. Sasha and Bianca should be great, hopefully. The storyline has been back and forth in terms of, how they've booked it, but I think the match itself could be very good. And the triple threat for the Universal Championship should also be great. So, as far as next week's SmackDown, I don't know if I'll be doing a review. I'm not exactly sure yet. Probably not. Even though it's the WrestleMania edition, I'm not banking on doing a review that day, so it'll probably be the 1 week I don't. But yeah, it should be good, though, between, I think, are they doing like a cutting edge or something with like Edge, Roman, and Bryan? Maybe. I think they're doing a face-off next week. I forgot with who. They already had one this week with Rollins and Cesaro. Maybe it's Sasha and Bianca. Maybe that's what the face-off is next week. I don't exactly know, but I'm looking forward to that too. So thank you guys, as always, for checking out these audio reviews. I appreciate it. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content, including hitting that bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. The Talking Smack review should be up hopefully later today. There's a lot of shit I have to catch up on. The written review of this show, for example, and just there's a lot of stuff missing from WrestleRant.com right now. I'll just say that much. There's a lot of reviews I have to catch up on. It's been very busy. Next week is going to be even busier. A lot of content going up here on the channel, though. A lot of cool interviews. You're not going to want to miss it. So have a great week, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, or great rest of your weekend, rather, and I'll catch your ass down the road.